Og vi tjekker lyden 1, 2, 1, 2, og her sidder den sådan, som den nogenlunde vil sidde på vores speaker. Den kommer til at være en lille smule for lav. Vi skruer op. Test, 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 test. 1, 2, 1, 2. Test, 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 test. 1, 2, 1, 2. Ja, tak. Sygt. Lyden virker. Stream will start at 10:30. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone. This is a very cold day in Denmark, so there's a bit of chaos around. Some people have not arrived, and I couldn't get out of my garage. But here we are with a little intimate audience. We have today session number 3 in our workshop, and today we are going to talk about pipeline, roles on set, how do they actually use mocap for telling creative stories. And it's not all about mocap, but it's kind of a broad perspective we are looking for. We have my good colleague and friend Bertil Vorre, who is a director and a creative person that will tell us a little about something.
A lot of things.
Take it away.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, nice to see such a big audience. This is the future of cinema, you know. I think I met most of you in our little meet and greet session, but my name is Bertil. I'm a film director, and for the next hour, I will be talking a bit about conventional filmmaking to virtual production, be breaking down a workflow of how to record motion capture and work with this in filmmaking. So this is a little agenda for today. I will start with a little introduction, talk a bit more about me. Then I'll be talking a bit about the similarities and the differences in conventional filmmaking versus virtual production. And I will be going through a case study, a film called The Otter, that uses a lot of this technology. And then at the end, for the people that do not know that much about Unreal Engine or virtual production especially, or filmmaking for that sense, I'll be talking a bit about how can you learn this and what courses are out there to look for. So yeah, my name is Bertil Vorre, and I come from the sort of classical live action filmmaking part. I am a commercial director, and for the last 6 years I have been directing commercials in Scandinavia and also in Germany and the UK. And I also do a lot of music videos and often use VFX and animation in my works, but I'm not a VFX artist, I'm not a CG artist. I come from the filmmaking world. And I hold a bachelor's degree in what's called film and transmedia. So it's like a film school education, but where we are looking into different mediums to tell stories. So this is also a bit about virtual reality and virtual production and so on. And for the past 2 years, I have been quite obsessed with Unreal Engine and found out, as many other filmmakers, how powerful a filmmaking tool that has now become. So I'm looking into using that in my storytelling, and especially within fiction projects. And the first thing I will go a bit into detail with is just in general what virtual production actually is. And maybe some of you know a little bit about it, but in general, virtual production or VP is sort of all about using real-time CGI to tell stories, often through LED volumes, whether that could be, you know, creating fully digital worlds or mixing live action footage together with CGI. That's quite amazing for filmmakers, because now you can actually interact with virtual sets. You know, if you're a director, cinematographer, or an actor, you can actually interact with these virtual sets and make changes on the fly. And this is like the game-changing part, because beforehand you were forced to go through a very strict pipeline. Maybe you were standing in a green room all day, and after 45 minutes, the film crew gets tired and you get dizzy because you're only seeing green. But now you can actually use virtual production to interact and see these things. So it becomes similar to working on a live action set, where you can actually use this sort of a creative approach of changing things as you go along. It's much more creative in that sense, and more flexible. Another big part of virtual production is motion capture, or mocap, which essentially is a tracking system like this one we're in right now, with a lot of infrared cameras that basically can track, for instance, an actor's body or facial performance, or it could be a camera's movement, and then you can take that digital virtual camera or a virtual CGI character. And this allows for a much more realistic movement in animation. But as I also mentioned, it gives a lot of benefits to the creative part. Another thing that I'm also going to touch a bit base on is 3D scanning and how to actually scan a real actor and convert into a CG character and get that lifelike performance across. And there's a lot of benefits using virtual production, and one of them being costs. It's now much more accessible and way cheaper. I mean, Unreal Engine is literally a free program, and this was something just a few years ago that was just not possible in the industry. Now we can do this in Denmark, and it was only something you would see on big $1 million budgets in the US, but now we can take this technology and actually tell stories for way less money, which is just super exciting to me because we start to see new approaches of filmmaking this way because it's become so accessible. Now, speaking of $1 million budgets, I'm just gonna show a few different examples of virtual production. Some of them quite well known. One of them is probably the most ambitious virtual production that's ever been done so far, and that is the Avatar, the first one, and also the second one, where they use the same sort of technology as in this base, tracking body movement and facial performance. As you can see here, we have the actor with like a stereo infrared camera, so that's sort of like tracking all these small dots on the face, and that movement can then be applied to a CG character. And that's what virtual production is all about, to really sort of try and capture the reality, simulating the real things in filmmaking and applying virtual. I don't think I have been to a virtual production talk without somebody mentioning Mandalorian, so I thought I would do the same, but I am actually so tired of this example because we all know it. I guess it's simply because it was one of the first major productions that got recognized using virtual production. And even though they actually ended up replacing pretty much the background in every single shot, they still managed to get realistic lighting on the protagonist that's wearing this silver reflective armor. Imagine being in a green screen studio. It would just not be possible to do this. You would have to do full CG, or imagine painting out like green reflections. Like, it's just not possible. And you can now do that with virtual production. And the other part is it's so much more nice for the cast and for the crew to see what's going on and interact with it and work with it. Another, for me, a bit more interesting example is how the DOP, Greg Fraser, and his technical team used Unreal Engine to do a tech visualization when they had to shoot the Dune film. This film takes place a lot in the desert, where they have to rely on natural sunlight, and that is actually extremely difficult to plan. And what you can do with Unreal Engine, they did a replica of the locations, and then there's this function where you can insert the location, the time and date, and Unreal will simulate exactly how the sun would be moving at that day, at that location, at that specific time. And this way they could plan, okay, the sun is actually shaping our location at this time. We have 45 minutes before we have to move on because then we're losing the sunlight. On this example, they did a virtual digital version of this big flag rig they used to cast shadows. So they could test out, okay, this is how big the flags needs to be in order to cast the right shadows. We have this and that to shoot that scene. And this is so beneficial when planning something complex as this, because you can test out everything with a virtual camera before actually going out there. So you know how to do this. And with filmmaking, when the money's running, you have to be really quick. There's no time to improvise in that sense, or figure out, oh, will this work? You know, it just gotta work. And this technology can also be used on a tiny film production, where you can test this out. It doesn't have to be these big Hollywood productions. So that's why I thought it could be interesting to actually show some different examples that are not Hollywood production. This is a commercial I directed 2 years ago for Trykfonden, which is about saving the brain and avoid brain strokes. And it was, a project like this is sort of like for a good cause, so the budget is often quite low. And I knew I wanted this very playful, cartoony universe. I wanted to use virtual production, but we only had one prep day, which is also very little when doing virtual production. So we had to use some of the limitations and turn that into the strengths. So in this case, we avoided having a CG scene that's actually optimized to work in real time. We couldn't afford having a tracked camera as well, so we went with just simple dolly movements and static camera, and then we used pre-rendered backgrounds. We displayed on this LED volume in Filmgear, where they have LED volume set up, and we could still use the Unreal Engine real-time technologies. We could program our lighting to work together with the Unreal lighting, and even though it's some quite simple scenes, we could still, you know, play around with this real-time. And the most, for me as a director, the amazing part is that the whole film crew can see what's going on. You know, I don't have to say, oh yeah, there's gonna be this landscape full of cakes and snails, and people can see it. And for Claes Bang, that was doing playing this the protagonist in this little campaign, you know, you can see what's going on. It's just so much more fun this way. So that was just an example, and I would just like to show the final result. Again, this is all in camera VFX. So this was sort of how we shot it and how it ended up looking.
Stræk. Snak. Kilt. Kan du huske ramsen, der gør dig i stand til at redde liv? Stræk. Snegl. Smil. Ikke helt.
Stærk.
Snak. Smil. Nej. Stræk. Snak. Smil. Hvis du husker de 3 tegn på stroke, kan du redde både din og andres hjerne. Stræk. Snak. Stig. Hej. Christian. Næsten. Blødning eller blodprop i hjernen. Strike, snak, smil. Tæt på. For når noget ikke er, som det plejer, så kan det være et tegn på et stroke. Stræk. Hænger den ene arm. Snak. Hænger ordene ikke sammen. Smil. Hænger den ene mundvig. Hvis du oplever et af de 3 tegn, så skal du straks ringe 1, 1, 2. Og vi prøver igen. Stræk. Sport. Smil. Stræk. Skak. Smil. Stræk. Snak. Smil. Nej. Stræk. Snak. Smil. Hvis du lærer tanken at kende, kan du redde liv. Stræk. Snak. Smil. Ring 1, 1, 2.
Thank you. Yeah, so this was just another example of using some of these virtual production elements, but on a budget. And I want to take this further and highlight a super low budget production. It was a music video for the Danish rapper Benjamin Hav that I directed a few years ago. And I was like, okay, let's use Unreal Engine and virtual production. We have no money. How can we do this? So obviously there was no money for an LED volume. So we used a canvas and a projector and used back projection, which we hooked up with Unreal Engine. Again, you know, we used pre-rendered backgrounds, but we could still adjust some of the things in real time. But this allowed us to get the in-camera visual effects. And I just want to show, this was how our very homemade volume, our stage looked like. So that's quite alternative, but I mean, it was working, and it.
Back projection?
Yeah, that's back projection. Yeah. So that's just another example of using these technologies, but on a super low budget. It doesn't have to be all Avatar Dune. Now I want to dive a bit deeper into how to use this technology in full CG production, especially with motion capture. You know, the previous examples have been a lot about in-camera VFX and LED volumes. This is going to be a bit more about how to actually do full CG production. So I'm going to highlight a film called The Otter that I have written and directed, which is technically still in post-production. But a little bit about the project. It's a 22-minute long film, and it's about a young man called Finn who works at a grill. And one day he's assigned the task to supervise a new female employee that joins the team. And in order to impress her, he invites her to this virtual reality game called Dolphin Jockey 2000, where you're actually riding on dolphins and balancing. And he's having a bit of a hard time expressing his feelings, and he falls down into this rabbit hole of online toxic bad advice, which leads to this quite chaotic misunderstanding. And it's a film that explores online relationships and dating in the modern tech age, and it's combined with animation and an absurd comedy. And you can see a few screenshots. We shot this a year ago or something, and it's half live action and half CG, all done and rendered in mainly all done in Unreal Engine. And the goal with this project was to do a case study where we tested out all these new technologies. I mean, some of the tools we use are not even a year old. So for us, it was important to make a project on a smaller scale where we could test out the whole pipeline and the workflow, and figure out, can this actually be done on a budget in Denmark? And yes, it can. And we are now taking, you know, this knowledge base we have gathered and moving on to working on a feature film with this technology. Because that is the time now to do these productions in Denmark. And it can even be done on an indie film level budget as well. So yeah, that was sort of like the goal with this. We finished this year. And I just want to talk a bit more about the virtual world in this film. Here are some clips from the film. It's set in Denmark in this retro-futuristic world where people are spending most time online. So it's not that far from the world we live in now. And they are spending time in the metaverse, so in this virtual reality. And they're using this special sensor technology, you know, chest sensor, and also this big crotch sensor to feel and interact with the virtual world. For instance, you know, experience riding a wet and slippery dolphin, which is the first online date that the main cast here is having in this story. And as you can see, some of the animation is still quite rough. This is motion capture that's then been cleaned up and combined with conventional animation. And this is an example of just the first animation pass. So there's no like environment or light or cinematography that's done yet. And I would like to show an animated scene from the film that shows this very uncanny valley, weird animation style I'm going for. A big part of the comedy is that contrast between, you know, the real life world and the quirky, strange virtual world. And MetaHumans and Unreal Engine is perfect for that because it's quite easy making something very uncanny. And then it goes into a little behind the scenes montage of how we have used motion capture and virtual camera in our pipeline. Let me show that.
Elsie, har du lyst til at spille coverplay med mig? Jeg har lige købt den her nye expansion pack, coverplay, FOSS Edition. Have no fear, believe in yourself.
So that's the reality of virtual production. The director, of course, have to experience what he's letting the cast go through here. So yeah, that's a bit about this film, and we spent a lot of time prepping, trying to build different dolphin rigs and tracking these dolphin movements, putting into Unreal Engine. And I just want to sort of try and go through our workflow and pipeline, and I've divided this into sort of 3 sections. I mean, working with animation is one big post-production, but I've sort of tried to divide it into how you would normally divide a live action process. So in this case, we started with the pre-production, meaning going through the, like, making concept art, figuring out how is this virtual world, how does it look and feel. You know, we move into storyboarding and doing animatic, in the actual final characters, before we then move on to what I call here production. Oh, it's like the on-set motion capture shoot. Here we spend a lot of time on the technical prep. We test our characters with the motion capture system, figure out, does it work? Do we need to go back, which we had to do, and do some tweaks? And then, of course, we have the shooting days. I'm going to mention a bit about what it means to direct motion capture and work with this, and how we approach virtual camera. And then the post-production, as I call it here, is about selecting the motion capture takes and cleaning up this data, and then move into the final cinematography and lighting. And do like cloth simulation and effects before then moving to the rendering and compositing state. So the pre-production is just one big nightmare in Miro, putting together a lot of mood boards and notes and references. I did a lot of like quick photo bashing to figure out in Photoshop, okay, how do I want this universe to look like? I did some, I'm not that proud to say it, but I did some AI concept art just to quickly flush out some ideas before then moving on to creating actual proper original concept art. A big part of the film takes place in this sort of like virtual reality world that's inspired by the Meta Quest or the Apple Vision Pro, where our protagonist is navigating these different windows in this personal space. So it's very inspired by the Apple Vision Pro layout, where he can interact with the with the different windows. Here's a concept art we did illustrating a scene where he by accident deep likes a picture of this new female employee, a very old picture on Instagram. And she gets the notification and he really panics. So we were like testing out the look and in this state before, then moving on. This is the first concept art we did of the fictional game, Dolphin Jockey 2000. And it started out being very realistic, as you can see here, and wasn't really working that well. So later on, we changed it to a much more surreal and sort of like plastic universe, which fit the story way better. But this was the first sort of iteration. And this is another concept art. What's cool about spending a lot of time on concept art is that you're learning, what works and what do not work, and you're forced to think because you're spending quite a lot of time on this. And here's just some other concept work of, okay, how are they interacting in this game on these dolphins? And then when it's super heavy artistic storyboarding, which you should never do, because that sort of like ruined the purpose of what a storyboard should be. But we used this in our pitching when we were getting the project financed. It was a cool way to showcase the playful tonality in this project. So I thought it was actually kind of cool to almost make the film in this sort of like graphic novel style. And then I ended up changing every single shot you see here. But this was sort of like showing the universe. Back then, he had this VR horse that he could ride, and you can see some early concepts of the sensor system. And there is this AI robot manager that he's working with that we actually ended up building. And then finally we could move on to the character design, which was like a big thing here. Originally, we were going for not using Unreal Engine, but using Maya and actually having a different pipeline. And I was using another facial capture system that just wasn't quite working, and I tried out a few different things, but it took a lot of manual work to get this right. And since half of this film is taking place in animation, it's very important that the emotional part is working. So I decided, okay, let me just try out Unreal Engine. And then I tried it out, and I was completely mind blown by what you can do, especially with the MetaHuman character creator system and how versatile and powerful it is. So this is the sort of digital avatar of these two characters. We started shooting in a photo studio, a lot of high-resolution images in different lighting conditions, details about the eyes, the teeth, capturing the skin. It sounds a bit bizarre. And then we moved on to 3D scanning our actors using photogrammetry. We also used a plugin in Blender called Face Builder, which is a way to create a face mesh and based on reference images. And when we had that 3D model of the actor's head, we imported that into the MetaHuman creator, which is Unreal's character creator system. And we could then generate a character based on that comes fully rigged with facial rig and body rig, and it's pretty much ready for production. But we then took that character and imported back into Blender, did custom sculpting, and did custom textures and the cloth designing. And this is sort of the process of having these very highly detailed reference images and then doing a replica in the MetaHuman creator. This is just like a little example of from our amazing character designer called Lily that worked on some of the character creation part. And we also did like custom makeup. And Here's just another example of our lead actor, Tobias Lander, that we turned into this digital character, which is, yeah, a combination of Blender and Unreal. And then we ended up creating custom textures in Substance Painter, which is basically Photoshop for 3D. And we took these custom textures and blended with the meta-human texture to sort of still get this a bit gamified look that we were going for. And that's super important to get the likability from the cast, you know, the small beauty marks and these small details. And it helps a lot sort of avoiding the generic meta-human look that you can sort of get. And what's quite important when, you know, creating these characters, and also especially when you do custom sculpting, is to constantly test the animation and make sure that it works. This is an example of the meta-human animator, which basically is me filming my face with an iPhone and using the LiDAR scanner, which is like the infrared camera in the iPhone, and then taking that data and apply it to a CG character directly in Unreal. And out of the box, this works really, really great. And this is one of the big game changers about this pipeline. Because just a few years ago, this would have been taking so much longer to do. And you can really get that sort of lifelike facial emotion across. Then we did some render tests. This is done with Path Tracer in Unreal Engine. So this is their still quite early ray traced render. We're just doing a lot of quite uncanny, weird tests, you know. But you know, look at this. Like it's quite amazing the level of detail that you can get out of Unreal. This is a little tribute to the amazing floating head issue that some of you might know in Unreal. Working with this technology is also super janky, and that's another thing because it's so early, you know, and it's still in development, and Unreal is constantly updating. So you also run into a lot of problems, but it's quite amazing what you can get out of the engine here. Then when we have the characters, we could finally move on to prepping for the actual motion capture shoot. So here we would do a classic animatic, which is like a animated storyboard sequence of the scenes. And we could use this for shot planning. And then we spend a lot of time prepping here in the studio and testing out the characters and how everything was working together. And then we could finally go on set and shoot, which is in many ways quite similar to like a normal film shoot. I think we were like 9 people on set this day. And there was no DOP on the shoot because we were mainly focusing on, you know, getting the body movement. In this case, we had some specific scenes where we used a stunt woman because we needed these sort of like weird flying animations. And quite often you would never actually record the camera movement the same day you record motion capture because that can be a lot. And the flexible, amazing thing about virtual production is you can do this in different steps. So I had a camera there, a virtual camera, to simply just like preview how I would shoot this. And working with motion capture, it's quite important to still approach it the same way you would do a normal shoot. So if I wanted to do a close-up, for instance, on an 85mm lens, I know that I'm very close to the character. Then it doesn't work that the character is moving all around because she will get out of frame. So that's why it's quite important to still approach it the classical way. And then later on, we did the cinematography. Yeah, we worked. What you need to have in mind is like you need room when planning for like technical issues. We had a lot of prep days, so actually there was no issues here. But things like calibration is something that's a new thing. You constantly have to calibrate when working with motion capture. It's not a big deal, but it's just another way of working. And the same goes with suddenly the filmmakers need to be much more involved with technical artists and motion capture operators, which are a different segment that usually would never be on set and never communicate with the rest of the crew, unfortunately. So that's a quite amazing thing about this. Yeah.
How come you used a female mocap actress?
Well, she's a stunt person.
1 second, will you just repeat the question?
Oh yeah. You were asking why we used a female actor. In this sense, we were recording specific stunt movements. So we needed to use a professional stunt person. We couldn't use our lead cast in this example because we need these very specific movements hanging in wires. So that was why we...
But that could have been a male too, couldn't it?
That could have been too, but
doesn't
that
it
was...
give different motions?
There is, but we had access to this incredible stunt performer that happens to be a female. And in this case, we were going for these very kind of weird, unnatural, quirky movements. So it wasn't a problem having a female in that sense. And that's another thing with motion capture, technically anyone can perform, and you can take that data and apply it to any character. Of course, as you say, you can tell that if a man is moving or a woman is moving, there's a difference there. But in this scenario, it was not a problem. Let's move on here. Then when we finished the shoot and had all the data, then it was a matter of selecting the different takes. And what we did here is we did a mock-up in Unreal Engine to get an idea of, okay, these are the takes, this is how we want it to be. And then we exported that data and imported into Maya and Motion Builder and did the cleanup. And this is quite important to know that, nothing works out of the box with motion capture. You have to spend quite a lot of time cleaning up the data. And for instance, in this scene, they have like actual contact and interaction with each other, and that's also quite difficult to record with motion capture. You can do it, but it requires cleanup afterwards. With this case, we actually, half of it is Rococo animation, which is another technology that's not precise, but sensor-based motion capture. And then the flying, hovering is actually created in this studio. And then in Motion Builder, we merged this together. And as you can see, the facial animation was recorded later. And that's also another thing that's, something you would normally try to avoid. If I'm recording my body speaking, I'm looking in a certain way, and it's super important to get that. But again, we were making this uncanny, weird scenario. So I found it super funny that the character might look a bit like this, but, doing body movement this way. That's like part of this virtual world. And if you've been playing VR, it is janky and it is weird, so we were going for that. But that's another important thing to have in mind, that you would normally try to do the body movement together with the facial animation. Or you could go in and clean it up and reanimate it so it would match. And that's, of course, another approach. So we refined the character animation and then brought it back into to Unreal. Another part is the cloth simulation here. You can get real-time cloth simulation in Unreal, but it's not, it's still quite early. There's hopefully going to be a time where we can avoid this, but we were simulating the cloth and then importing that as an Olympic file in Unreal. So this is technically not real time. This is simulated in another software and then brought in. So quickly, you are relying on quite a few different tools outside of Unreal.
What version are you in?
What?
What version did you work in?
Marvelous Designer here. Oh, we started in 5.3, and then we actually decided to update to 5.4, which we're currently working in, because there's a lot of new great animation tools there. And the whole layout is just so much better. And yeah, this is just some clothing simulation test. Again, it's quite awkward outfit that I'm going for here. But yeah, so for every single shot, we have to actually prep each shot for clothing simulation, and that just takes a lot of time, and that's a lot of work. But it also separates it from this sort of like game engine look. It really is a big difference having like a realistic simulation. The same go for effects, so for instance like particles, but this is something Unreal is quite good at. So we do not need to work in Houdini or something like that. We are trying to actually keep as much as possible of the production within Unreal Engine. For future productions, I am testing out to see if we can actually avoid Maya and Motion Builder and stay within Unreal, because that would save so much time. But it's still a bit difficult, and limited at this point. Then finally, we would, when we have the animation, it's brought back into Unreal. We have the cloth simulation, everything put in place. Then I would start doing the cinematography together with a DOP, and we would sort of like plan and play around with the virtual camera in Unreal, hooking that up with an iPad, and then figuring out. In this case, there's also a lot of actually classic animated cameras that's put together. And then we would try out different looks. So we started with this very unrealistic, very high-key lighting setup, because I thought it could be funny to place a lot of light sources that doesn't come from any place. But it just looked a bit wrong, and it wasn't really hitting the actual emotional part of the scene. And then we changed it to this, which again, it looks like a studio lit environment in an exterior location. And in the real world, you would never light like this. But I thought, we can do that. It could be fun to do, to make that sort of different look. But then we actually ended up going with this, which is more realistic. And we actually placed actual light sources in the scene. And it just felt more natural. Suddenly the audience could just connect more with it. But of course, it's still having this sort of very shiny, plastic, high-key look that we are going for. I will not go too much into to detail, because rendering in Unreal is a big thing. It's a really big thing, and it can be super difficult. I feel like we spent half a year figuring out our render settings and how to render from Unreal, because it is real time. Stuff like depth of field is working with like a post-process filter, so it look a bit janky as soon as you do really close-ups. You get a lot of artifacts. That's just the limitations of the engine at this point. We tried working with Path Tracer. It's not yet there for production, like literally like 80% of. So that also became a big thing. Suddenly, for instance, simulation would have to be done in another software. So we ended up using real time, which is, obviously a big advantage of Unreal. And then we try to render as much as possible, like to go for the final look directly from Unreal. So it's only a little bit of compositing, but you can render in passes, so in different layers, and then you have full control in Fusion or in Nuke, where you can, continue the compositing element. And that's another big part of making the final look. You can change so much. What we do when we render it out is we then sort of crapify it. We take and apply a lot of imperfections, like making the render more blurry, adding chromatic aberration, adding lens diffusion, all these elements that we are used as audience to look at. This is what makes it feel cinematic. It's because we're used to see through, some old anamorphic Russian lens that we just find cool and cinematic. So we are going for that look after we have rendered out. And then at some point, we will reach color grading. Again, what I showed here is just like temporary color grading. That's going to be another big thing about the look development. That's going to be the grading and adding in these, real film grains and all these small details. And then at some point, hopefully this year, we will assemble everything and have like a full finished film. But it takes a little bit of time. Now I just want to mention a little bit about like learning the tool sets and the language of virtual production. Some of you already know a lot about Unreal Engine and maybe filmmaking as well. But I just want to recommend, it's quite easy to get super overwhelmed by Unreal Engine because it's for some reason a program that can do everything in the world. And if you want to learn how to do filmmaking, you have to figure out what's necessary to learn and what you should never touch. And as coming from a traditional filmmaker background, you have to learn a little bit the game engine logic, and you have to understand like the basic language of CG. You can't avoid that. It is a 3D program after all, and that's the same thing about getting used to working with digital assets. It's gonna react different to CG live compared to how the real world is. That's just how it is. And then there's the thing about, especially if you come from the film industry, you will have to work a lot more with like technical artists and technical directors and even programmers. And you have to play a bit around with programming and blueprints in Unreal yourself. And that can be some of the challenges when learning this software. I just want to recommend, if you're a filmmaker or if you want to learn more about filmmaking in Unreal, like this is by far the best course I have found. It costs around $150, but it's by a company called Boundless Entertainment, and the instructor is actually a former DOP that decided to learn Unreal. So it's having, sort of like this filmmaking approach, and it's just really high quality stuff because there's a lot of shit on YouTube as well, and if you really want to learn it the proper way, this is just an amazing course that takes you through like step by step use the program. So can highly recommend this. There's some good courses there. Another one is made by what's called Unreal for VFX. It's a bit more technical. It's a former VFX compositor that used to work in Nuke. So it quite quickly goes into these more advanced workflows. So that might be a bit overwhelming if you have not ever opened a VFX software or a CG software. But it's still a really good course, and there's some cool tutorials. I just want to sort of end this little talk with a cool example. We are going to see new films getting made and with this technology. And last year, a film came out by a Latvian director called Flow. It's using not Unreal Engine, but Blender and real-time technology. And it's literally him and his producer that pretty much animated the whole feature film. And then they had a little group of French animation graduates that worked a bit on the character animation at some point. And they spent 5 years creating this film on a budget of $3.5 million US, which is insanely low for a feature film. It's just something you have not used to see. This industry have been dominated by the big studios, and now we see these different genres and stories taking place in animation. And if you compare it to Wall-E from 2008, that was the year that the first iPhone came out. I mean, it was completely different back then. But there was 275 people working on this. And they had a budget of $180 million US. And they spent 14 years on this. And they, of course, also did it because they had to build a lot of these tools. It was simply just not, it wasn't, there was no such thing as Unreal Engine as we know it today, or real-time technology with Blender. So it was way more difficult. You can maybe ask, is this a good thing for the animation industry that is becoming cheaper and more accessible? That's another discussion, but we are for sure going to see new stories. And for me, that's just very inspiring. Yeah, so if you wanna, yeah, thank you. If you wanna check out this project I was breaking down, you can visit this little website. And yeah, is there any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, like, did you also do the MetaHuman project? Did you also do the hair simulation outside of Unreal, or did you do that inside?
Well, at some point we're actually doing some custom hair, where we tested out this new plugin for Unreal. Wasn't working. Still had a lot of limitations. But we're actually using real-time hair simulation in Unreal. And you can get some quite good results if you mess around with the settings. So yeah, it's that part is real
But
time.
how did you manage to like render it out? Because if it's like real time and you also want to do all these like steps in the movie render queue,
yeah, I mean that's another thing that's quite special with Unreal Engine in general, because everything is running real time. So for instance, let's say there's an explosion that's happening real time. And you can come across issues like a rock landing in front of your lens, and then you render it out and fuck, But there are ways to bake all this, so it's always the same. And for filmmaking, that's just crucial, because you want, often, your graphics card would crash, and you would have to pick up, and then that's possible. So you can bake it down as well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my question is also, you talked about like the render issue in Unreal, because I also kind of experienced that rendering is, one click in one box can make a total difference.
Yeah.
But you have to know where the box is, and
Yeah.
if you can't find it, it takes forever. So do you think it's an obstruction that you need to render? So meaning in producing a feature film.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're live in Unreal, I guess it makes it easier.
Yeah.
But are we there yet?
Well, I mean, for instance, a very acclaimed studio called BrainBar Studio, which are also the guys that created Love, Death and Robots, and now a new Amazon Prime series called, I think it's called Levels. It's like a bit similar. They're actually having an episode where they used Unreal Engine and where they rendered from Unreal Engine. But, they disabled the depth of field. And what you can do in Unreal is then you render out motion vectors and like a C depth pass. So you get that information, and then in compositing you add in the blur after, because that's just limitation. We're doing the same with certain shots. If I want a close up of an eye, it's gonna be so distracting with these weird artifacts happening, and I'm forced to simply just add the depth of field in compositing. So there are some limitations, but I would say, the amount of time, I could render out 2 minutes of animation in one night, and then the next day let me just change everything up, and I can do that again. And that's a game changer. You don't need to invest a lot in hardware. A lot of bigger VFX companies, they have these render farms. That's soon just not really gonna be a thing anymore. So yeah, but it is a struggle, and with Unreal, it's sort of like part of the charm. You have settings everywhere. You have settings on your camera, you have a post-process volume, you have project settings, you have sequencer settings, and you have settings when you render out. And there's a lot of boxes, and you just have to know where to look. You sort of like get used to working like that.
So it sounds like we're gonna have a breed of directors that knows about these things, because I don't know many directors that so deeply are, invested in the tech part of that.
Yeah.
They normally just give it to post and they will fix it. But this will change, I think, when we do these things.
Exactly, and as the film I mentioned at the end, the flow, it's a director and a producer that's doing the whole animation and rendering and everything. Yeah, that's just a different way of filmmaking.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I was wondering about the storyboard that you showed. I know parts of it was live action, but I suppose there's a very different workflow when there are so many things that are adaptable and changeable when you're shooting or after you've shot, in regards to like a classic filmmaking where you plan a lot of shots and they don't diverge so much from what was planned in the beginning. I don't know if you can talk on that.
Definitely. I mean, that's for me the funny and amazing part about virtual production. It's the fact that you can change. You know, when you're standing on a live action shoot, you would have a storyboard that you did beforehand and figure out, okay, you know, you show up on set, and that's sort of, for me, that's the backup plan. If you're running out of time, you can always follow your little guide and the storyboards. But you want to be able to be creative together with the DOP and play around with the camera, and often you would always find a better framing than what you planned. And that's the same with now working with real time. You don't have to be that strict in what you planned. So you will do your animatic or your storyboard, and then you will try it out, and then you will just play around with the camera and actually change, you know. And for many of the scenes, you know, when I would go back, I was like, oh, why did I do this? You know, and then I would actually change it and just re-render it. And that can be a big pain because it takes a lot of time. But on the other hand, that's super amazing. So you don't have to be that planned out.
Christian, so asset management, when you're dealing with so many different pieces of software, assets here, Olympics, sequences, blah, blah, blah. Do you use asset management, like a software that controls and tells people where
I really
you are?
should. Yeah. You know, I'm still doing like final version 3, final. And then the final one is called version 1. I'm not that good with that, but I use Git, which is a version control system. And that is like, that's another thing. When you're working with Unreal Engine, suddenly your project will simply just be destroyed for some reason, or it will crash, or you can't open it. And this is where it's so important. Even if you don't share with other film or with other artists, you need to have version control to constantly like back up your projects. So we used something called Anchor Point, just like a Git client I'm trying out that's sort of made to be a bit more simple for more visual artists. Yeah. No, yeah, because it's for us, you know, I'm also working with remote artists on the project, so it's important that, you know, they can sit on their machine and download the project and work with it.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what was your team on a show like this? How big and what were the roles? How many different types of people?
So for the live action part, I think we were like 15 people, like on set or something like that, you know. So and I was asking for a lot of favors, you know, because I direct commercials. I'm lucky to have a big network of filmmakers where I could ask, you know, do you want to do this because it's completely unpaid? And I was lucky that I had some very talented guys working with me. For the Unreal part, to be honest, I'm doing a big part of it myself. And then, of course, we're working with BrainBar that help out with capturing the data. And then I'm working with, I don't know, 2 environment artists that's helping out. I'm working with a Korean fashion designer that actually designed the clothing. Again, I just reached out, you know, do you want to be part of this? And he was so down. So he's simulating and taking care of the cloth simulation. And then I'm working with 2 animators. And yeah, pretty much sort of like myself being part of everything as well. Yeah.
Coming up here. Here's the microphone coming over here.
This is maybe a bit of a tough question because I think it's kind of relevant. So, you know, Unreal Engine is owned by Epic, and it's open and free to use, but it might not be that way always because, for example, they just recently reduced access to Quixel, which is their big photogrammetry asset packs and so on that are like more limited to access now, which has been free for the, I think, last 8 years. So I just think there is a challenge also in spending a lot of time or investing a lot of money or interest in a company that, or in a software that where they actually can kind of control I suppose, the development of the industry in that way, or like,
Yeah.
And I use Unreal Engine a lot. I just thought maybe you could put some words to that, because that's interesting also, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of part of their business plan to get us all hooked for free and then start charging us, right? That's we're probably going to see some monthly subscription. That's just part of life. No, I mean, of course, working with something like Blender that's open source, it's amazing because everyone can contribute. There's also a lot of issues. There's also in Unreal. But the cool thing about, using paid software is often, the support is better. And they roll out things when they're actually fully developed. With Unreal, it's free now. And I think, I know that depending on what you're earning, you then start to pay them. And yeah, the Quixel, I think it's still free unless you earn a certain amount. Then I think you have to pay for the assets. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's that's just how it is. Good software will cost, and I assume this will also cost. But thanks to all the teenagers playing Fortnite, we now have this amazing technology. So yeah.
So yeah, I think this concludes a brilliant talk, Mr. Bertil.
Thank you, sir.
That was one of the better talk I have heard, to be honest.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Big applause. The plan will be like this. Now we will ask Mr. Windelin to take 5 minutes break, but then Windelin have a couple of cases to talk about, and then after that we will have lunch. It will be the kebab again. We like kebabs. Then maybe Mikael Jaeger is here, and then he will give after lunch talk. What do you think about that? Good. That's it. So 5 minutes breaks.
Sounds good.
Recess.
Er der lyd fra dig af? Ja, det kan vi godt. Bare lige give mig et øjeblik. Bum. Afvent. Du spiller bare. on take 2. Good luck.
Wait! Don't leave!
No time. Gotta go. Full speed ahead. final nu. Jaeger. Ja tak, vi har billede. Dejligt. Ja. Jamen jeg tænker, vi så småt er ved at være klar.
Jeg er klar, når I er klar.
Det er bare lige give folk en hjernevasker. Nu får du lige en lyd på. Den sætter vi lige her. Sådan der. Hvis du bare lige vil spise.
Hallo, hallo. Kan jeg sige, kan du høre, hvad jeg siger? Er det højt nok? Skal jeg tale højere eller mindre højt?
Sådan der. Ja. Og du er live, bare så du ved det.
Ja.
Og man kan omvendt også sådan forhåbentlig se.
Back in your seats.
Very small audience now. So, we're ready. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me again. Yeah, it's good to be back. I will do a very, very short presentation of myself since I was here last week as well. My name is Mikael. I'm a visual effects and virtual production producer working in feature films and TV drama around Europe, mainly in Scandinavia. I have been working for about 30 years in the business. Also, my background was actually producing commercials a lot. And the first show I'm going to show you here today is a animation film or experience that is a show that I produced when I was working at Ghost some years back. So it is not super new, but I think it's really relevant to see how we plan to do a mocap production and to use Unreal for a film back then. And then I have two smaller cases based on feature films where we have used mocap in different functions for final pixel and for previous, and how we plan that, and what especially to be mindful of when using mocap. So the first, these are the 3 shows that I'm going to talk about. Snacks is a very, very bad name. I think it's also called The Girl Who Couldn't Sit Still. It's still running at Experimentarium in Hellerup, north of Copenhagen, as an interactive show. And then Boy from Heaven is a Swedish feature film, came out last year. And Troll is a Netflix movie that is on the platform still, where we are producing the sequel now. So I'm going to talk briefly about that. But I think the main case I will talk about is this Science North Experimentarium collaboration to do an interactive show where we wanted to do an animation film where the audience could interact with the story or story points at least. So it's not fully interactive, so you can kind of change the whole story, but there are game elements included in it. And it's in a big theater, so the audience is interacting as a group as well as individuals. So that we had a lot of kind of game design ideas that we had to really think about. How do you actually work with a group instead of, I mean, there's a lot of games where it's individuals or person towards a person, but here we suddenly had a whole group and had to figure out how they would interact with the story. This was at Ghost Visual Effects, which is a traditional visual effects company working in a traditional visual effects pipeline with Maya and Nuke as a render and etc. etc. No, composting, of course, not render. To try it out on Unreal, we had the idea that we would be able to run it real time when we started out. Then we became more and more visually ambitious with effects and stuff to add on. And as this was going to be at least 6K resolution using 3 HD projectors in the theater, plus 4 projectors on the floor, it just proved impossible to run full image real time out of Unreal back then. We started in as far back as 2017, and we just didn't have the power to do that back then. So we ended up, the solution we ended up was to pre-render the background and use overlays for all elements that needed to be interactive. So that's kind of this setup that we ended up using back then. We also had to change kind of the pipeline for a company like Ghost, so we had to find Unreal people to bring them into Ghost. I can see a lot of visual effects companies now are employing Unreal artists. I personally totally don't care about technology, but I care a lot about artists, and I think a lot of what we want to do, if we want to bring up the level, is has to be artist-driven. Artists being directors, but also animators, compositors, lighting artists, texture artists, everybody in the traditional pipeline. I think we really need to bring them with us into new pipelines as well. I'm not a firm believer of generalists. I really like experts, to work with experts, but that's kind of my personal belief. I think we can bring it up to a higher level. And at least if you're working with generalists, you need a lot of time. But that's something that also is super valuable, that you can actually do a lot of stuff yourself if you have the time. But often on projects like this that actually has a paying customer, you don't have time. Because we had a deadline when the whole theater was finished. They were refurbishing the Experimentarium after a big fire. When that was done, the show should be ready on the opening night when the Crown Prince, back then the present King of Denmark, were to inaugurate the whole place. So that's a very, very strict deadline, which meant that we had to be sure that we could do it on time. So the process for us was kind of to start, just a little bit of the background on it. It's a 12-minute story. As it is in a theater, we wanted to do it like a one-take experience. We can't really cut and do time cuts in the story. So the story needs to be, the audience enters the room, And from there on, it's one continuous story, which also meant everything going on the screen needs to be a one-taker. So that it wasn't a really big deal in the terms of how to capture or animate, but of course, in terms of render, it was a big deal to render 12-minute 6K out of Unreal. Pretty heavy task back then. And we teamed up with Goodbye Kansas in Uppsala for the mocap. They had a very similar setup to what is here, slightly bigger in an old church. And we're working with two characters. This is our initial character designs, and these are our CG characters as they ended up. So first part was to figure out how to even tell the story. We did, as you also told Bertil, we worked with traditional storyboarding. It's a very, very fast way of iterating, trying new things. We had to figure out each scenario, how to go from one scenario to the next, and always trying to kind of, how do we move the audience from one place in our world, story world, to another place. That's where the raft came into place, so we could ride on a raft down a river, moving us from one location to another. And the reason the storyboarding is this weird format is that we could then wrap our storyboard and the lower part to the floor. So as a very, very early animatic gameplay test, we projected this square image into a corner of a white studio room. And we could actually have kids running around saying, okay, how does it actually work? Do they understand the story? Can we actually do the interactive parts that we wanted? This resulted into a animatic where we could start. I've muted the voiceover because it's very, very early and rough. So we get an idea of what the story is and what the elements are and how it plays in a physical space as well, because this is not just a movie, it's a physical space and physical experience that we wanted to try out. Then the audience jumps onto the raft, and the audience can then, as a group, control the raft, how it flows down the river by, as a group moving from side to side and then steering. So a lot of studying group dynamics was a big part of it. But this leads kind of to how we wanted to do the animation. We very quickly found out that doing 12 minutes of original animation was impossible through the traditional pipeline. So usually character animation is about 10 seconds per week or something like that if you ask a character animator to work on it. Maybe slightly faster now, but back then it was like, there's a rule of thumb that how much they could actually produce of original animation per week per animator. Doing 12 minutes, that would have been way too costly and way too time consuming. So we decided to try mocap and to team up with Goodbye Kansas. And looking at our characters, we found out like, what type of body language do we want? And I believe quite a lot in a thorough casting process to figure out what character are we actually looking for. Do we want this is a young girl and an older man? How agile are they? What kind of body language are they doing? A lot of actors can, of course, act in very, very different ways, but age is a thing that is fairly difficult to act. For some, especially if you have an older actor having to portray a younger person, then your body language is way different. For kind of ease of use and communication, we decided not to work with a young girl, but a young female actress for the girl part, and then a guy for the older man. We wanted somebody who had some mocap experience for them. We couldn't find an older actor who had mocap experience back then. I don't know if it's easier now, but that's an interesting, at least to figure out when you're planning a mocap, who are your characters. Try to get an idea of what kind of body language your characters have, and then find an actor and test, maybe into a casting session, test if your actor can actually move in the way that you want your characters to move. You get so much out of having real people on your set, and an actor who fits the role. I would say it's a really big benefit. Then we had all our props. We have that bike that you saw earlier for our old guy. So we had built like something he could sit up that had the proportions. I haven't even changed my clothes since back then. I can see it's very bad. No, it's my uniform apparently. Building a car over here, which doesn't look like a car, and it doesn't have like the 1-to-1 proportion with a car, but as our actress or mocap actress is taller than our character, we also needed our vehicle or prop vehicle here, that this is our car, to have similar disproportion to the car in the animation. So when she jumps the hood and jumps the roof of the car, it kind of fits her size, and we can see in the live capture and the live render that it fits the car, so she's not floating or going into the vehicle. So we had a props list of everything we needed with the measurements, and that's an important part of your preparation before going on a set. Also figuring out whether you need your props to be tracked. Are they stationary, or do they move around, or is like something you have to move between characters, like handing over a box, handing over another element. So that kind of planning is important for you in your mocap prep. Let's see if I can get to the next one here. So this is our character director, Klaus from Ghost, who is almost only looking at the screen during the mocap and not on our actor, because one thing is what the actor does, but if it's not captured and can't be transferred to your character, it's more like how your character moves. That was important for him. So that's a little bit of a balance if you want to work directly with your actors, or you want to actually look at the result of the mocap on your animated character. And I think also that could be a little bit of a personality thing. Some directors are used to working with actors and have that direct relation, also working with the camera, seeing everything through a camera maybe. And some, as Klaus has a background in traditional animation, want to see how does it actually look on the animated character. And I think both parts are valid, but that's something you have to decide when you're on a mocap set, whether you want to look at your mocap actor and do your corrections based on that, or you want to look at your animated character and make your corrections based on that. And I think it's, with my limited experience with mocap, that's more a personality thing than a technical thing. Yes?
When you recorded here, for example, did you like pause, then view through the scene and then re-shot, or did you just shoot and then looked at it at the end of the day? We had it in 5-6 scenes. Our whole story. We concentrated on one character at a time. So even though we had both characters on stage at the same time, we very much concentrated on one at a time. We did record both of them, but we were kind of looking into it like if you would do on a traditional film shoot, when you shoot one direction first and then you shoot the reverse afterwards. Even you have both actors at the same time present. So a little bit of a combination, I would say. Tried to do pretty long takes, and that was also due to our time restraints. We had 1 full day of body mocap with the 2 characters and 1 full day of face mocap for our characters. We could have probably done the face mocap on the same day if we wanted to. Technically, we could have, but
it's also a lot of things to have in your head at the same time. And because our camera on the stage is a bit far away, we can't go into a close-up on this. Our way of storytelling here is we can't go into a close-up. They're always at a bit of a distance. So body language was slightly bigger and theatrical, something we want to do and concentrate on first, and finding our visual language, so to speak, and then go back and concentrate on getting the dialogue and the lip sync correct as the next step.
Rolling on take 2. Good luck.
Do we have sound here?
Wait! Don't leave!
No time. Gotta go. Full speed ahead. Oops. Wrong gear. Okay, get that fixed. What the fuck do? Whoa! Now I remember.
The water's rising. We have to get to Martin. Everyone, get on a log.
And here we had to simulate a little bit of surfing, so she had to be in a soft surface, being able to have something that gave her a believable body language. For the next day, we only used one actor. We actually chose the male actor. We thought his facial expressions were easier to read, and also he was a more experienced actor. As an actor, she was a younger and less experienced, but really good with her body language. But for the facial, we actually chose to use just one guy for the whole thing. And I think we wanted a very, very expressive face because it's always on a distance. So to be able to actually read it for our audience, that was very, very important. It was really nice being able to concentrate on that in just one day. Post-production takes a lot of time, even if when you are in a real-time engine. Back then, it was, I think maybe also because of the artist we had available being at Ghost, we chose to bring everything into Maya and clean up and stitch all our takes into that 12-minute long one take. Do that in Maya. I would guess that more is possible now to do directly in Unreal Engine, but we had some really, really good animators available at Ghost at that time, so they could add a little bit, add to it and fix the stuff that didn't work out of the box from the mocap session. So yeah, I'm sorry. Going back to one thing, that selecting the takes was also a little bit of a hassle, I would say. You tend to bring in a lot of data, a lot of takes, and a lot of how do you actually look at your takes. We had that video that was on the screen during the shoot on the day. We had some witness cam video, and that was pretty much what we had to be able to choose from. So we could look at that fairly bad video, fairly bad real-time version, or we could look at the witness cam and try to select our takes from that. And I think that proved more difficult than we thought to figure out exactly where to cut and what to use in our material. And especially as we wanted it to be one flowing one shot at the end. So if you're doing single shots, you can select more precisely, maybe saying, okay, I want this part from this take and that part from that take. That proved more difficult for us if we say the first part of the take is really good from this one and that the second part from the other take is really good. That gave us a lot more stitching to make it work as a one take. So clean up in Maya. I'm not very technical, so I can't say much about that other than it was more time consuming than we had expected. So it's something, if you are in a traditional working environment, have time and the money to do it. So it's something that definitely needs to go into a budget and a schedule. because it does take time to make it perfect and something you can actually use in your project. And for a project like this with a very sharp deadline, that proved a bit to overcome. Stitching to a one take, no matter if it's an animation project or if it's a live action project. I've just done another live action one take show. It's a big thing to make things work in a one take. So also coming back into Unreal with our animation to make the whole show work as a one take is a big thing that needs to be again projected as money and time and have the artist availability to do it. As this was a test for Ghost VFX also to work in Unreal, we only had one Unreal artist for the whole show. And we tried out a lot of different workflows. Sometimes he would do the effects directly in Unreal Engine. Sometimes we would do it in the traditional pipeline and import it. So we ended up in a bit of a weird mix also to be able to do it in time for the whole project. Rendering also took ages, as I remember it. 6K plus an 8K floor is just a lot of data. And we couldn't really, because it was so big in the real studio at the end, we couldn't go down on quality or anything. Depth of field was not a big issue because it's basically when you are looking at a whole world, it should, so except for a little bit of false perspective and false far distance that was a little bit more bluish and a little bit less saturated, then we didn't really use depth of field as a visual style element here. So I can show a little bit explaining the different steps.
Take two.
Going from one to the other.
Wait! Don't leave!
No time, gotta go. Full speed ahead. Oops, wrong gear.
And this is the final render then.
Whoa, now I remember.
The water's rising. We have to get to Martin. We need
Water was hard, still hard to do in Unreal Engine.
You all better get on a log. Uh-oh, this log's sinking. Looks like yours are too. If your log is sinking, jump to another one. We have to keep moving. Keep your
And
eyes
now
on the
these
logs.
are the interactive elements. So as soon as we track an audience member then stands on a log, it starts syncing. And then they can jump on another log to be able to go to the next level. The whole process was also made a little bit more difficult by us having a technology partner in Canada who had to do the whole interactive part and the programming. They ended up using Touch Designer for that part. They didn't use Unreal for the game elements actually, and also for all these overlays was done in Touch Designer. We're using Kinects to track. So that's kind of the live mocap on the stage was using Kinects and tracking up to 25 audience members, figuring out where they are as individuals and as a group for part of the show. Any questions for this part? Yeah, we need the mic.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what kind of software did you use for mocap? Is it Rococo or?
No, it was a camera-based. I think it's Alan? Goodbye Kansas. They have the same system as you have here, right? Qualisys, yeah. So it was, yeah.
Okay.
That part worked, I mean, really, really well. They had a fixed setup where we can pretty much just come in and be effective from day one, which was really, really good. And to have a partner on the show, because it was completely new for us. Everybody else on the show never worked with mocap before. So coming into an existing mocap studio as this one is like invaluable. You can't do it without, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, my question is more about the like the facial motion capture, because I think we haven't heard much about it yet on the course. And you mentioned that like the one guy came back and did all the facial mocap in post, like the second pass of it. So how did that work? Like, was the guy just essentially had to lip sync to a pre-recorded track and try to match it accurately, or was that not important because it's in the distance? And
no, it was pretty important to have a good lip sync. The show is produced in English, although it also is running in Danish, English, and French because it's in Ontario. So lip sync was important for the original version, which is the English version. And we had the possibility to re-record a couple of times the audio. So we had a version of the audio which we kind of called our temp final, not final, master final, but the temp final version. And then we had the possibility to do adjustments to that. But in general, for the body action, we let them play out the dialogue because I think also you mentioned it earlier, but that the body movement and audio that you get from kind of having dialogue when doing something with your body is different from when you just move your body and say the dialogue afterwards. So I think it's interesting to get a natural body language and how you move and breathe and have breaks when
so it was like a full-on head plus face motion capture on the second pass. Right?
Yeah, actually for the second pass we couldn't do. We just did the head because that was like. But during the recording of the body vocab, we also let them play out the whole dialogue because that's where we needed and found all the little breaks. And I think we used that timing in our final audio more than the timing that we did when just doing the face. The face was much more in bits and pieces. It's more like the shouting, hey, come on, do this, help me. And also having gamified elements. So we had sometimes some pieces of dialogue that was dependent on what the audience actually did. If they did not on the big raft steer out away from the obstacles and say, "Ooh, you have to be better at this." I mean, adding that kind of dialogue, and sometimes she would turn her back to the audience and still speak because we could change the dialogue. All the kind of cheats that you can do in that game.
Yeah. That's amazing. I can imagine like
it's still live at Experimentarium, so you can go and play with it.
And jump on logs.
After 7 years, it's still running.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much.
That's actually just a follow-up. So you did audio recording separate of the facial and body mocap?
Yeah, completely different actors.
Okay.
So the audio actors are other actors. We didn't really care about. When casting for this, we didn't care about how their voice were and if they actually spoke English to use for this. So, and having a Canadian partner, they were really particular about the voice actors that we're using. So we used Canadian cast for the final English version,
makes sense,
and an English cast and a French Canadian cast as well. So I've got 2 more smaller projects where I just, again, will talk a little bit on how we use practical mocap on a show, and also a little bit of just some of the learnings that we had. We have a scene in Boy from Heaven, Swedish feature film taking place in Cairo, where we have thousands of Muslims praying in the mosque, and we had about 50 extras on the day to shoot it, so we had to fill up with CG characters, and sorry, our VFX company for this, and they had the equipment to do in-house mocap for this. So again, the casting process was quite important for a guy like me coming from Copenhagen. I do not know much about praying in a mosque, but what we learned is that it's really important whether you are from Egypt or from Morocco or from Indonesia. There's a little bit small differences. So again, the casting process, be precise in your casting. So we found an Egyptian Muslim, so we knew that his style of praying would kind of fit into this specific scene. So there was no like audience saying, "Hey, this is off, and that's not how we do it," or something like that. It's done very, very simple in their studio. I'm sorry, I don't know much about the actual software hardware they are using. I was more like from a producing side, what's important for me in the communication with the vendor on this show. So doing it in-house meant that it was a very, very close collaboration with the animators. So the people who were in charge of the rest of the pipeline to figure out how to actually do it. We did some tests with a lot of, they're all wearing the same clothes, which makes it, of course, somehow easier, somehow also a little bit more complicated because it's there's a lot of cloth sim in that part. But we did a couple of takes and a couple of tests, so we could kind of spread it out with imperfections to these thousands of avatars in the final. See if it's running. It's not. We started out with a very, very simple previs, just to figure out how many people are actually in that space and how does it fit the editing. Did a lot of close sim and variations. It's a university, so they are all wearing uniforms but different colors. So that's the only variation that we have. So we used it for background here, and then for that simple scene, and that's it. That's pretty much how much we used in the final from the mocap. And I think that the most important learning for me was like be super precise in your casting process. Figure out, just saying like, I mean, I can look at somebody and do it again and be motion captured, but I wouldn't be precise on how it would actually be done by a Muslim praying 5 times a day. They have just a different body language and gestures that means little things means a lot. So be precise in your casting. Last week I talked a bit about troll and how we use previs, and an important part of the previs was to use mocap, because again we had a lot of animation, a lot of troll scenes, and we wanted to test out before going on the shoot what would actually be needed, what can we afford to do, what can we afford to actually finalize. It's not just afford to shoot, but actually afford to finalize for the final movie. And for that we used mocap to do a lot of scenes that every scene with the troll is previs using mocap. We previous 175 shots, ended up with 164. That's what we could afford to fit into the movie at the end. The first previous version, when we went back and budgeted the post on that, we could see we couldn't afford to finalize it, so we did a cut down version of our previous to say, okay, this is what we know we can actually finalize. Shot it slightly bigger, or slightly for more shots, so the director had a little bit of wiggle room in the editing, and then going back actually into post-vis, doing a lot of the mocap again and the animation again to make it fit the actual plate. So this shot is based on an actual plate. This one is based on a Blender download from Google Earth, and this is like a little bit of a mix of a special CG scene with some props put in, and it's all done by our one-man band Alf Løvold in his own living room. See if I have we couldn't really find a troll. They're hard to control, and they are really, really timid, so they kind of stay in the nature, and they're huge, so it's difficult to fit them into a suit. It takes a lot of time to do this much previs and to actually put it into the scenes, figuring out what we actually wanted, doing tests. So for us, it was really, really important to do have a good iterative process and have a very, very short pipeline, and being able to go back and do and redo and redo and redo. So do a lot of different versions. He has a tendency to overplay it a little bit hard. Oh, he's a good friend though, so wise, it's important for us to have a short path from actually doing it into animation, seeing the result, doing an edit, go back, ask the director, is this what you wanted? The director usually isn't present during the mocap. It's something that Alf does in his own living room. So it's a kind of different process as if you go on a stage with a team. But the advantage is that we can do a lot, and we can redo and redo and redo, and we can do very, very quick retakes. So it's basically just, giving him a call and say, okay, that shot 5, we need it to be a little bit different. We need his hand up here, and then basically we could get it the day after it was out and rendered, and we could try it in our previous edit. So I think that for that kind of show, the short pipeline was really, really important. And I'm afraid for the streaming audience, I have to say the next clip here, we have to cut the streaming because due to some rights, and YouTube has a way of shutting down when showing feature film clips. So let's see how it. Sorry. Ja. Det er ikke så vigtigt med lyden her, men det der er vigtigt for os her, det var jo så igen at få. Oh, sorry. English. No, it's okay. The more important thing was to try to be able to. I put in some examples on how the actual end result was and how rough our initial animation also was. So for the initial animation, the most important part was to get through all the shots, figuring out what's the storyline actually going to be, and how long is a shot. Because if we had done it on storyboard level, it's one thing that is really hard to assess is the shot duration. And that's something you see when you have a real character doing the real gesture. What's the speed of the gestures? What's actually happening? That's where a previs is super valuable, knowing exactly how long our plates were gonna be for the actual shoot. So we can go back live now. So I think I have two things to consider for a project like this, and one thing is the access to the mocap over a long time. So having it in-house with the previous artist was a huge benefit. If you can't do that, make sure that you have a pipeline where you can easily do iterations. So getting a good deal with the studio is paramount. So you can come back and do new versions a lot of time, because I think that is where you can really refine it. If you're constrained to doing one session or very few sessions, I think you will not end with a result that is the ideal for a big show like this. A little bit of lifting the kind of what's next on Troll 2. We are also doing previs and post-vis. No suits anymore, now all AI for the mocap. So Alf in the Rococo suit is history now. Now he's just jumping around in his living room with an iPhone on a stand. So I think that is another step that we're taking. But we've also taken another step, which is actually being in this studio doing some mocap for final or almost final animation, or at least for main poses and timing and gestures from the trolls. So we have tried to build it to the next step. We still have some difficulties in mocapping directly for large creatures because it's really hard for an actor to act that big. So I think it will take a little time before we get maybe to have actors that have that experience, but also to figure out what is the workflow to get from a normal sized person to a 50-meter troll. We did a lot of research. We also talked to Andy Serkis' company, Imaginary in the UK. We haven't really seen any perfect examples of large creatures mocapped by humans. It's not quite there yet, but could be interesting to follow in the time to come here. That's it. So any questions?
Mikael Windelin talk, and now I would like to invite you for kebab and shawarma.
But first, questions.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, you said that you moved to like AI mocap, so it was only like for the previous post.
That's for the previous and post-vis, yes.
Yeah, and did you like get the same kind of quality, or was it just because it was easy, or?
I think for previous post-vis purpose, it was at least as good, I would say.
Okay.
It's again, it's his in-house workflow, so I'm thinking any difficulties kind of kept away from me as a producer. I only see the result. So knowing exactly whether it's more if there's more cleanup or more technical issues, I can't really say.
Okay. Yep. Thanks.
But I'm very happy with the result. I can say that.
Is that all for questions? Looks like it. Thank you.
Then we're good for lunch.
Lunchtime. Go on.
And the idea is if there's a shawarma and there's kebab, then we can take a half because they're quite full. Chili and over there, and
Just for the live streaming audience, we will be breaking for lunch. That will take about 20 to 30 minutes, whatever it is. And then we'll be coming right back with Mikael Jaeger showing Unreal VCam setup and sort of that whole workflow and everything. So stay tuned and come back in half an hour. Thank you.
Welcome back, my favorite audience. And hello to Mr. Jaeger.
Hello.
Our in-house Unreal connoisseur person. What are you going to talk about today, Michael? Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Hello, everybody. And out there on the internet. I am a virtual production supervisor for those people who doesn't know who I am. I specialize in Unreal Engine as previs and cinematic content for games and films. And I'm going to show you, we're going to do this wonderful thing called a light demo. We're going to bring it up a notch. We're going to, don't try this at home, kids. So let's see what happens. But yeah, I thought there's a lot of slides and stuff. I had like a huge deck last time. So I thought we'll do something different, right? So we're talking about certain roles, new roles on set in virtual production. And together with Alex, which is the studio manager here as well, I made him my BrainBar assistant, virtual camera assistant today, Unreal Operator. And I thought we'll talk a little bit about sort of like the VCAM part of all this virtual production and what goes into it, how do you use it, and show a bit of how do I use it in Unreal, just to show that you can use Unreal Engine in many different ways, as an editor, as a tool for pre-realization, Bertil talked about as well. But I'm going to show you using this this project from Epic Games called the Meerkat demo. Now, I didn't make this, just a huge disclaimer. The wonderful people at Weta actually did a lot of stuff on this because it involves a fully furred and animated meerkat and an even crazier eagle that has feathers. And there's like a whole behind the scenes out there on the internet. It's a bit older by now, I think a couple years old, showcasing, feather system for Unreal. But I'm not gonna talk about that because I know nothing about it, except that I know it's difficult because they talked a lot about how difficult it was. So the fine people at Weta have helped Epic Games making this demo. And this was actually to showcase the fact that you can, in Engine, create an entire short film at a certain level of quality. So, Alex, can you play this one? So we're just going to see this is all running in Engine. This is the viewport from Unreal. And you'll see this live. And then down here below, this is all the different shots that they made. And then after that, I'm going to use the VCAM and recreate my own version. Yeah? Oh, you can't see anything? Yes, of course. Is that enough? Yeah. Play it.
So that's you can close the viewport now. So this is just an example to showcase you what they did, and you can see down here below in the sequencer track, you can see all the different shots, and of course, the audio is there. There's like tons of effects and blah blah blah. I'm not going to go into much detail with the sequencer. You can do that in your spare time. But this is Unreal Engine. The tools I'm going to be using here together with Alex is this thing called Dragonfly. And Dragonfly is a virtual camera plugin from Glassbox. And what they've done is that they've taken all the systems that's already in place in Unreal and made their own plugin that shows the user information in a more digestible way. Because if you've ever used the virtual camera from Epic, which is really good, but it's very Unreal-centric, as in all the details in the details panel, and I haven't created like UI widgets yet. So what I really like about this is that it's presented in a really, really nice way for the operator, because I'm a big believer in that if you bring a DOP on stage, they need to operate the same way as they do on set. Not because it's like an iPad all of a sudden, they have to do all sorts of new things, changing lenses, and it's just a bit of a hassle. So it's much easier that if you treat it as you have an Area Alexa and a crew of 4 people right around that, just servicing the whole camera. So if you want to change the lens, you can just call out saying, can I get another lens, and so forth, and so on. And what the Dragonfly plugin has is like a couple of panels here. Is all the orange bits are Dragonfly. And it has like a setup where you actually tell it what you want to do. You want to use it for virtual camera. It has a color space input, so Unreal can render this out in, this is Rec 709, but if you're using ACES or something like that, which is the really cool good standard to know, because it's a standard that has been approved by the Oscars. If you Google Oscars.com, I think it is, they have all these tools that is for the industry to make it easier for everybody to speak the same language. And OpenColor.io, which is the engine that drives that, supports the ACES profile, so you can render it out in the ACES SG and all the other ACES formats. So when you bring it into DaVinci, you have the biggest color space ever, because Rec 709, it can be fairly limited. But anyway, so you can choose that, and then you have this server application, companion app connection, which is basically the iPad. And it's just like a server function, and then you have the general tracking information where we, through the live link, actually connects it to the QTM, which is the Qualisys system. And then this constellation down here is being tracked in that system. Now, that is like, and I managed to see your talk, Bertil, just at that spot where you're standing with the VCam against the person who's hanging in the stun rig. And what that does is that because it's in the same coordinate system, then VCam and Performer is exactly where they are. There's no drift, there's no nothing like the optical suits or in 2 different coordinate systems, like if you're using a Vive tracker together with Rococo, it's like, it doesn't know where the 2 things are in relationship to it. But anything that's tracked in here, same space. So that's just to say that we use that, and then we connect it to the camera, and the camera will track one-to-one. You can also use the inbuilt, if you're using an iPad of a later model, you can use the inbuilt ARKit function. So you don't need a tracking volume. You can actually use it at home if you wanted to, but then you have to consult with all sorts of drifting and things like that. But it's very cool that you can use your iPhone or iPad at home to do virtual cameras trip, right? And then we have the operator main, and the operator main menu is basically to say you can create different locations on the set where you can say, save that location. So if you read through a script, you can say, oh, I need to be by the door in shot 1, shot 2 is like in the garage, and then you can prep all this stuff. And that goes into the whole idea of having an operator, an Unreal operator that can prep stuff before the DOP comes in, for example. There's a lot of stuff you can do with the movement. You can, for example, say that if I want to do a helicopter ride, but I want to do it inside this volume, then I can add some offset here. So when I take 1 step in real world, I take 10 or 6 kilometer steps in the virtual world. So you can actually just walk across the whole island in 4 steps, right? And that's really good to do if you have something like quick actions, or you need to, a car or something, you need to, follow somebody. But you can also just parent it to the car. So now I can just stand still, I'm driving through Unreal, and I can just, I used it on the helicopter heist to parent, the whole thing to a helicopter that's flying across a city. And then you have the camera settings, which is basically to say you can here we're using what's called a Dragonfly generic camera, but you can literally go in and create your own profile. So if I know that I'm using a Alexa Mini LF on set, I can go in and put the sensor size in 100%. That means the frame I'm looking at is the same as if you would take the Alexa LF on the day of the real filming, if you're making previs, and it will look the same. And then you can also do the same with the lenses. The cool thing about Dragonfly as well, and I know it might be coming later, is that you can, into the normal Unreal, is that you can actually mimic lenses. So if I go and shoot a lens, like some bizarre Russian lens on the lens grid, put into Nuke, export a lens map, I can actually read it back in here. And you will get the distortion as well. So if a DOP comes in and goes, okay, how does this shot look like? He will be looking through a camera and a lens that is sort of simulating the real world, which is really cool, especially when you do some sort of, there's some focus stuff and stuff where you can choose to focus while you're doing the VCam. I'm a big fan of doing that afterwards, because if you don't have a focus puller, you're asking the DOP to do many things at once, and he's focused on one thing, right? It's like maybe sort of just his job, right? The cool thing about that is that Arri actually has a plugin for Unreal where you can use a proper Arri. I'm looking at you, Bertil. Arri Alexa focus, follow focus in Unreal, which is really fucking cool. But it also means that you'll probably have the focus puller with the DOP at the same time, right? Because if you want to work in the same way you work on set, you should also do it here. But you can scale it up and down, which is really nice, right? Snapshots is like you can go around and go like, okay, here's a snapshot of the scene and the camera position. So it's very easy to jump to that snapshot. It's another way of creating bookmarks within the scene. And then we have some recording sessions, which is basically to say, okay, we want to record this sequence with this animation at 30 frames a second, because they have animated the whole sequence at 30, but you can change it to 25, 24, whatever you like. And then you can record the animation, and because they build this using NDI, which is a video codec over internet or network, it streams the images. So here you can also say, oh, I want to record the sequence, which is the Unreal asset, and the viewport stream. So you get like a sort of reference camera as well version of that. But that's it really. And then there's like a big Dragonfly logo in the middle of the top screen here, which is basically the camera has this thing called a home actor, which is basically where the origin of the camera is. And that one you can always move around. So if I'm standing, I'm 10 times 10 meters here, but if this world is 100 kilometers, I can move that somewhere else, right? And that's where the preset comes in handy, the snapshots and the bookmarks that you can go, let's go to the mountain, let's go to the valley, let's go to the, whatever you want to do. So yeah, this is the scene. So the bottom window here is the Dragonfly, and that's one viewport that is locked to the Dragonfly. And this is where all the VCam is happening. And then the top one viewport is Unreal, because Dragonfly locks itself to one of the windows, and you can't move anything around in there, because it's like saying, hey, all right, no, get off, it's my window. It also just displays information. For example, here, there's some, it's the same information as if you look through a viewfinder on set. It's a little bit simplified. There's some stuff down here that's not being showed, but it has like a shot. We can time sync or gen lock the signal. So if we are on a set that has a sync signal time code or whatever, we can actually lock it to that, so we know that everything is as it should be. And then it talks about the film bag, and also it's very nice to have that. And I like the way that they sort of taken the normal info from a viewfinder on set and then display that, because you could have done that so many different ways, like maybe in a very Unreal way, right? So like, tons of information and buttons and things, like, no, hang on a minute, because I think it ties into the whole idea of, the roles on set as well, and how you display information, that you keep it in the same world. Because I've seen people go, you want me to, what, this is an iPad, that's not a camera, right? It's like, and I understand the idea of it. I think it's a bit silly, but I understand the idea of, so you could also just pipe the signal into a viewfinder if you wanted to. So if he really wants to have the whole rig on, with the Steadicam arm and everything, and because he wants to train, then we can pipe the signal into his viewfinder, so he sees that as if he would on the day. Cool. Let's. I'm going to stop talking too much now. It's difficult. It's difficult, I know. Right, so Alex, can you change the sequencer to the one? Yeah, we have the right one. Okay, so I made a new sequence, which is basically, I just stripped out the camera data of the sequencer, because otherwise Unreal will go, oh, no, I'm going to log this to a camera, This is a new shot. So I'm going to try and do a little bit of a sort of like I'm going to go and grab this thing now. Just unlock it. And I'm just going to show the audience in the studio what that looks like. So this is basically just a bespoke built cage for the iPad. It has a track on top with 4 dots, which is being tracked by the Qualisys system. And you can see as I move it around, you can see what that camera's moving, and I'm looking at this view. This is the view that is basically the bottom viewport here as well, right? And you can see it's pretty responsive. I mean, it's like, this is what optical mocap does. It just works, right? It's like, so I can go around, and if I was doing, let's say, virtual scouting, I could sort of, oh, there's a character over here, what's that? Okay, I can sort of look down. And what we've done is like, we build a small version of the BrainBar to verify that all the coordinates are right. So if I look over here, BrainBar stations, right? Can you turn off the layer of the BrainBar, Alex, please? Boom. All right, so now I just have my own world, right? So let's see if we can figure out where the action is. And I think it's around, here we go. So Alex, can we start? Oh, we got a 12 mil on now. So I'm gonna try and shoot just a quick taste for you to see. You can see what that looks like. Ready to record, Alex? Yes. Record. Whoops. And cut. Thank you. Can you play that back? So Dragonfly has this playback function that this thing I just recorded now, we can just play it back, and it plays into any viewport that has this thing on. I actually have a play button down here that I can touch if I wanted to, but I'm like talking to Alex. So can you play that back, Alex? It's also just the idea of, you know, who does what, and, you know, is there any issues? And so now you're seeing this live. It doesn't matter if I move this, it's baked, right? The camera's baked. All right, that looks good. Let's move on to the next one. Still on the 12th. So get ready to record again. Yeah. I'm gonna try and see if I can do this. Okay, so get ready to record. And record. Thank you. And Bertil is probably going, what are you doing, man? Cut. Okay. So let's do a pickup shot here. So get ready to record. Record. Thank you. And cut. Okay, can you give me a 50? No, 30, what was it, 30? Yeah. That's 30, yeah. And then get ready to record. Thank you. Cut. All right, get ready to go again. Let's just see what this bird is. Where the hell is it? Hey, bird, where are you, bird? So I actually have there he is. So I have a timeline down here. So if I was like, oh, you know, I wanna, maybe we should start. Where is it? Where did it go? Oh, Jesus. Can you give me a 12 again, because it's a bit too narrow? Thank you. So let's just, we're just gonna see where is it? And you can see this is why preparation and testing come in order. I'm just gonna see if I can find it. There he is. All right, so we're gonna start from here. And can you give me a 30 again? Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, okay, record. And you can see that it's like, it's all over the place, right? Because what, I'm gonna cut. What they've done is they cheated, right? Because they're only animating for the shots they need where the camera is. So it's not one long motion. But that's to say, it'd be nice if you could do that. You can create the entire scene. And I really like that. You know, you get the mocap actors in, you get everybody in, you shoot the scene, you send everybody home, and then you bring in the DOP again, but with the team who needs to do this, and then you start shooting. I think you mentioned a little bit about that, Bertil, earlier. It's that you can go and find the shot. Because what is the actor's job? Is to portray the characters, tell a story. They don't care about cameras. You shouldn't, right? This idea of going like, oh, but they need to look into the camera. Yeah, but they will at some point if you put the camera right in their face and they go like, oh, that, you just go, right? You can do that. So it's a little bit of a new way of working. I know that Cameron is really fond of this sort of way of working as well, because he's like, he wants to spend his time, I'm sure, right? Like really sort of trying to find the shots, right? All right, I'm just gonna forward a little bit here because I really wanna see this bird. Where is it? Okay, so it's coming in. It's a shadow there. Let's see if they, there we go. But I think what they've done is they animated it, right? And it goes, whoop, there we go, and then whoop, and then point. All right. All right, get ready to record. Cut! So yeah, my camera skills. But this just showcase as well. You need to know your scene, right? It's like you record. You know, your recording is only as good as if you know where the action is, and it's like, oh, where the hell did it go? Right. So does anybody want to have a go? You want to have a go? Come on. No. Come on. It's all good. So you can just hold that. It's a bit heavy. My arm's hurting, that's why somebody else has to do it. So what we can do is like, we can go back to the beginning. If you come over here, and then point that way.
Can I ask a question?
Then if you look down a bit, you can see there's a hole.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So normally on a film set, I would say camera's going, and then the camera would run, and then you would get ready, and then you would start to record. Here you kind of start the animation at the same time as you record.
Yeah.
That confuses
so that's that. Yeah. So I realized that when you start recording, Dragonfly starts recording in that instant. It doesn't go 3, 2, 1, everybody. So you have your methodology. You know, your method has to change a tiny bit. So you have everybody has to be aware that when he hits record, we're recording, right?
Playing back.
And playing back. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's because it's not like cue the background actors, get ready, roll camera, roll sound, everybody's ready, and then you go action, right? Okay. It's like everything is ready, action. So the idea is that if you want to have that bit of time before, and I've done it on many occasions where you just give everybody, you agreed and say 30 seconds or 10 seconds. So when I go roll camera, roll Dragonfly, it takes 10 seconds. You go 10, 9, 8, and then action, right? But it's a new way of thinking, so and you have to prepare.
Like an action you give.
Yeah. Are you ready, Alex, to roll this? Okay, you ready? Okay. Roll Dragonfly. Action. You haven't done this before? You sure? You don't know the scene? Better than me, man. All right, cut. Does anybody else want to give it a go? Yeah. Very good. Thank you. So the only thing you should be aware of is not blocking the tracking dots, right? Yeah. So can we reset? We'll just go from where we are. So it's right here somewhere. If you move around. Yes. Found it? Yeah. Go for it. Roll Dragonfly. Oh, right, we just cut. Cut. Alex, cut. And roll again. Because then you go into the ground, right? because I've offset the camera because you wanna, you know. Yeah. All right. And cut. All right, so I want to show you, well done. You're natural. I want to show you the next little bit of stuff you can do with this, which is really nice, is that now we have all these shots. Are you up for doing this, Alex? Because otherwise I have to go. Okay, so if you load the main, oh, hang on, wait. So when you go to review, so here have all our list of shots. So if you select everything, just shift select everything, all the wide shots. I mean, we call that wide now, but we can actually name it like ultra wide, extreme close up. I don't know, your normal naming convention you have, eh? And there's also an option here to go, if I'm really shaky, right, like I have too much coffee, you can actually smooth it in the engine, and it actually goes in and smooths the curves, which is really nice, and you can smooth it in Z, X, Y, rotation, roll, all that stuff. All right, so do you want to hit, so down here we have this export function, and we can export it as different things, but you can also export it as a level sequence, which is the Unreal asset, right? So if you hit export on that one, and say yes, yes to everything. Let's go. It's because it's overriding files because we did a test earlier. Ah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Just go into the folder. Yeah, just click yes, yes. It's because it's already in use. I know. Keep going. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah, it's a bit weird. I think it's because I might have turned on override, so it's trying to override one file multiple times, right? It might be an issue. Can you just go into the folder in the content browser and see if it's what's in there? Yeah, there you go. So we have all our, okay, so it's already done it. That's okay, that's cool. So let's go back and open the sequencer, which is called master. It's in that one, master sequence, yeah. Yeah, there you go. Is that the one? I'm confused now. Just go to the content browser, and then in the content folder, there's just in the top folder, content. There should be a, if you scroll down. Oh no, okay, hang on. Sorry, guys, technical issue. This is doing it live, me, doing it live. Right. Yeah, it's fine. I can't remember what I did. I thought it was this one. Master sequence. Oh, we're just gonna make it. All right, we'll just make a new sequence here, and then we'll just call it master sequence. Bang, chew. Just gonna close that. Oh, it's because we have, yeah. So Dragonfly is open at the moment, so it doesn't like us changing the sequence. There you go. So this is just a blank. I'm over here, by the way. Hello. This is just a blank sequencer, and what we can do is we can add these shots that we just did. Then we export it. There we go. And let's see, we're just going to take the last two here. Into sequencer. Bush, yes. Good complaint. So now we have, what we have here is, this is just our sequences. These are the shots we literally just did. So if I was, then this is the shot we just literally did. All right. And it's getting confused because it's two different. All right, so if I do this, something's happening. There you go, right? So what I can now do is I can treat this as a non-linear editor, right? So I can say, oh, I want to see this shot to here. I can, oops, not do that. I can then move this and say, okay, I want to start there, and then I want to use the same shot again, but I want to offset it, right? I want to just cut to something further in, or pretend this is the ultra wide or the extreme close up, right? And then if I do this now, then we'll get this. right? So it's just to showcase that you can actually use this as an editor as well. So for example, let's say we go from here and then do that, right? And this is how they did the whole thing in the beginning as well. The full thing that I showed you guys is like that's this, you know. And I think a lot of people don't realize that you can actually do this, right? And the cool thing about this is you can go into the sequence as well and say, well, hang on a minute, I want to do things to it. I want to change the manual focal distance, right? And then say, you know, if I wanted to change let's go out and go into the other shot here and zoom out a bit. It's telling me here that, you know, where the shot starts as well. So if I want to say, okay, I want to change the focal distance here, I can set a keyframe. I can go to the camera assets and trying to find this bit here and say focus setting, disable, manual, right? So now we are like, we're doing something really weird here. So let's, 50. Oh, I think there might be an auto exposure on here somewhere. But you get the point, right? So you can actually change the focus settings afterwards in here. You can also change the aperture if you wanted to, because it's all just animation data, which is pretty cool, right? So you could literally lay out the entire thing like this, and you have full access to everything. Plus, and you know, it's one scene. It's just a sequencer asset in the scene. So what we can do is we could find, you know, the lighting. Let's just go into the main level here. Lights, and say, you know, if I wanted to look at some of the lighting. Oh, don't they have a? Okay, so I think because they're cheating this a little bit, they might not have a directional sunlight. I mean, there's all sorts of other stuff. But I could literally go in and you know, I can, if I wanted to change the location of this, I can change this, right? And now that location is now changed in all the shots because it's the same scene. And I think that's pretty powerful, that you can literally on set, you know, with the DOP, any of the other stakeholders, the manuscript writer, you know, directors.
Did you all get everything that was going on here? Yep.
Okay. So it's very powerful because you could literally go like, come back tomorrow and have the first edit. And then you can even have the editor, on-set editor with you, right? Because you can even stream, if you want to work in DaVinci or Premiere, Avid, whatever, you could stream out this data. You can just give him the play blast or the camera, this camera movement as a MP4. But you can also do this. Now the editor might not know Unreal, right? But I think it gives the Unreal operator you know, a massive amount of power to actually help in the process of figuring this out, because you can try stuff. Can we just try that, you know, close up? No, that doesn't work. Can we just, can you just make a quick edit between these 3 shots in this sequence? And then, oh, it doesn't work. And then go back and go, okay, now I know. Work very creatively on set with those happy coincidences, right? And those still exist here, because if you shot everything as with the mocap actors, you might still go, oh, wait. I know we were going to shoot this on a 24, but actually, if I go all the way back here and shoot it on a 400, I get this feeling of the scene. But then when you walk past this window, can we change the sunlight? And go, yep, let's change the sunlight, right? But with great power, right, comes great responsibility. We all know what client does when they go, here's all the power in the world. You mean we can change everything? And you go, no. I normally say that, you know, when they start doing that, I'll charge them 1,000 crowns every time they change the thing. And then quickly they will go, it's fine. But anyway, yeah, so, you okay, Beth? You both, let's go away from that. No, they're very nice. They just have to have coffee and croissants. They're all happy. But I mean, any questions with this sort of thing? I mean, I know it's a lot to take in, especially if you don't really use Unreal. You use Unreal? Yeah, I use it. Okay. Because I haven't seen it before, that's why I don't know. You use Unreal? It's awesome. Any questions? Where's the microphone? Questions microphone. It's here. Good. Vorre, you go.
When it saves the level sequence, it is pretty much then makes a copy of the actual level sequence that you are using when recording, and adds the camera movement on top of that, and that's what's being saved.
Yeah, it's making nested sequences. They're called subsequences. You can actually see it here as well. And we have a system, if you know all your shots and you know how many there is, you can actually go create master sequence and type in how many shots, type how many, all this up. I mean, it's very hard to know that up front, I would say, but the system is super forgiving and it just eats all these things as you throw at that. And you can put audio in it, and in Dragonfly, Alex, can you scroll down a bit on the operator main menu? The other one. So down here it has master sequence on the recording. And this is where you tell it which sequence would you like to use to record into or from. So that it contains all the animation, all the things you need to happen. It could be everything, right? In the level, which is pretty cool. And then it takes that and bakes it into another sequencer asset that is just becomes a subsequence. It's also because, can you double click one of the shots on the timeline? Just doesn't matter which one it is. So you can see here it says master on the sequences now has a path that says master sequencer and then a subsequence BB shot 1 wide, and now we're into that one. That contains, a main sequence anim subtrack and a Dragonfly camera, because what is now done is that it's made the Dragonfly camera a spawnable. So because Dragonfly is a licensed plugin, you have to buy it or rent it a monthly. But it means that if you, let's say you rent for a month and then you come back later, you're not going to lose anything. You might use your shot's still there. You might lose something else, right? So you don't need the information on the Dragonfly display, but you still have it because it just spawns a camera every single time you play the sequence, which is pretty cool. And then it has all the other information. You could keep diving in and subsequence and subsequence. At some point, I think your computer might run into issues, but I've worked on stuff that has like many subsequences, which is crazy, right?
This isn't Dragonfly specific, but because we've heard a lot about like previs and using it for virtual production where it's live action combined with CGI. But something like this where it's fully an Unreal environment, is that something you've done a lot or is being done a lot where it's recorded directly in a completely CGI environment in Unreal?
Are you talking about you want to render final pixels like Death Love Robots kind of
because we're not there yet. Is kind of
we are. One of the episodes in Love, Death, Robots, and I've forgotten the name of it, is there's some soldiers that go into a very Cthulhu-esque cave. That's all done in Unreal. You should look up the behind the scenes of that, because that is like that. Some of the best, like this is made by Weta and da. So you can do it. You literally can if that's your style, because Unreal has a Unreal feel to it, right? You can grade it and stuff afterwards. Of course you can, and render out layers and work with it there, motion vectors and all these things for post, right? But it still has that sort of, because it is a hybrid engine, right? So it has the sort of gamey feel to it. But if you use that to your advantage, you can do all this stuff, And but I was just going to say, it also has a, Alex, can you go on the left side on the setup panel on the top? There's one that says camera mode. There we go. Yeah, top one. Yeah, so here it says simulcam. That's interesting because there's the green screen, right? There's Unreal Engine. We put a Genlock signal into it, and now you can do a simulcam where you can see Unreal where the green screen is. So now you can merge worlds, and with this one, it's actually quite easy to set up compared to, you can do it like with Composure, it's called in Unreal. It was a little bit more daunting because it's very, again, Unreal-esque. It's made for Unreal developers to go, oh, that one needs to go in. And here they sort of try to fix that. It works really well. The keyer in Unreal is not good. I know they're working on it, but you can use any other, Blackmagic keyer or whatever you want to automate keyer. So it has a function to do that, if you want to do that too, as well. Which I think is great for playing out, even for previs as well, to go, okay, let's bring in like Mikael Windelin's troll, right? You can bring in the troll into the studio and go, fucking hell, right? It's like, which is nice, right? I'm a big fan of simulcam. I think it's awesome. But yeah. Any other questions? All right. Bertil, come on. You have questions? No? Okay. Yeah. Oh, wait, hang on. We need to, otherwise people can't hear what you're saying.
So this could also just run with like a normal iPad without the whole camera tracking.
So
just
Alex,
using the
AR kit. Yeah. So Alex, can you go and disconnect the live link tracking settings? And then in tracking, can you choose the AR kit companion app? There you go. Now, this is now running the AR kit, which is basically using the LiDAR part of the iPad. I just need to change the stream. Give me a second. Good. There you go. So it's not working for some bizarre reason. I don't know why, but it's basically the. Oh, I think it was because we're in play mode. Can you close that? No, just close the sequencer. No, close the sequencer. Yeah, close that. Yeah. Just close it completely. There you go. So now it's completely dead. All right, so open the new sequencer, open the one that is like the main animation of the bird. You can just get it on the top bar. Can you get it from the top bar? The sequencer shortcut, yeah, and then the master sequence, I think it's called. No, that one up, sorry. Main sequence anim. There you go. And then we need to do something else. It was going so well. But anyway, so, but yeah, that's basically what you can do. I know, so, oh, there is something. Yeah, here we go. So it's just because I'm in, can you say, go to operator main, and then scroll up, and then go camera to home. Yeah, try that. All right. It might be. So this is also the problem, because it doesn't know where the floor is anymore, right? And you can see here there's a bit of latency, you know. Can you try and pull me up a bit? There's a bit of latency and stuff, but I mean, if it doesn't matter, if you're doing it for previous or to prove a point to a client, this runs on an iPhone as well.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about it, I said to some students out at the Unreal Meetup, is like, do that. When you present your scene, you know, don't use a standard camera and it's just a linear curve animation and it's just fly, you know, it's fucking boring. Do that, because you can really also love your own work, right? You can go in and find things and really sort of give it a bit more sort of feel to it. And you don't have to use Dragonfly. You know, there's a very, very good V camera built in to Unreal that I use all the time if I don't have Dragonfly. But if I have a client on set, I want to use this because the information and the way it's displayed and the ease of use with click, stop, start, all that stuff is really good. But yeah, AR Kit is amazing. That's how I started, because I don't have a volume at home. You know, so, yeah. Good. Thank you. And now it's time for free play. No.
So yeah, that was really good. Thank you very much. That was a little about that stuff.
No. It kind of concludes our day today. We want to have short workshops so people don't fall asleep. And yeah, well, I like the tracking as well. The policies tracking is very good because it's so robust. Yeah. And you can, you know, put boxes and marks on the floor and you can relate.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's.
I think Bertil put it really nicely, right? It's like it's one-to-one, right? You point a camera at the person, it's there because you use the volume. This will drift. You put it down, come back. Where am I now? Right.
True that. Cool. Oh. So yeah, that's. I hope you everybody enjoyed it, and it will be online, of course, also, which is good. Next time we will also have a bit of a talk about using Unreal and in-engine stuff and previous with Ricardo, who made his thesis on CADA, Copenhagen Academy of Digital Arts, using our volume and a lot of stuff.
So, and you will probably also be here?
I will be here as well,
showing
yeah.
the helicopter heist
No,
stuff?
I think actually because I just dawned on me that I want to show the...
the VR?
Yeah,
that could be
virtual
cool.
scouting.
Virtual scouting,
Yeah.
that could be cool. Yes, so hope some of you will come back. It's quite fun. We have actually 40 people signed up now for this workshop, just so you know. Yeah. Anyway, it's cool today. So happiness all around. Bye-bye. Can you wave to the camera? Wave. Okay. That's it. Thank you. Free play.
Doing post clip for sync. Clap. Thank you.